here with Mike with more writing tips.
Hey folks, today's about pulp writers of fiction. You know, we all love pulp writers of fiction. We all love Pulp Fiction, but what is it? It's the equivalent of the B-movie. It's action-adventure for its own sake. It's unpretentious entertainment that frequently has to do with crime. And some of the great pulp writers are Jim Thompson, who's famous for his brutal books like Population 1971, Raymond Chandler, who's the father of the modern detective story in many ways. He created Philip Marlowe. And you may have seen some of the movies starring Humphrey Bogart, like The Big Sleep. Mickey Spillane, a very popular pulp writer. And John D. MacDonald, who wrote hundreds and hundreds of books. You may not know who John D. MacDonald is, but chances are you've seen the movie Cape Fear, starring Robert De Niro and others. It's the second version of that film. In fact, John D. MacDonald is the reason I'm writing fiction today, and so many others, because he created a series character called Travis McGee. And he wrote 21 Travis McGee novels, and they are the models of what a modern pulp noir story should be. Well, what's noir? That means that it presents a bleak vision of humanity, and pulp and noir often go together. They go hand in hand. There's a writer, I can't think of his name now, but he wrote Nightmare Alley, which has been made into a movie twice, just like Cape Fear. And the first star, Tyrone Power, is in black and white. It's brilliant. I recommend it. And the new one was directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it's also very good, and I recommend it. But I'd like to draw attention to some pulp writers who may not be familiar with. One is Herbert Lieberman. Herbert Lieberman is still alive, but he was most active in the 60s and 70s with novels like City of Fear and Phone Call from Another Time Zone. Lieberman had a gift for portraying rundown cities that were decaying, and his descriptions of New York City in the 60s catch all the grit and poverty that exists, and also instill in the reader a great feeling of unease, which is what he set out to do. He also wrote Crawl Space, another book I recommend. And then there was a great writer named William H. Hallahan, who was busy in the 60s and 70s. And he wrote William H. Hallahan. I'm drawing a blank here. However, look him up. He's a terrific writer. He wrote a book on exorcism, which was brilliant. And his other novels are very noir, in that they instill a sense of unease in the reader, which is what he's trying to do. And of course, Rex Miller. Now, a lot of people may not be familiar with Rex Miller. He wrote a novel in the 70s called Slob, which was about a 400-pound serial killer. And he wrote 5 or 6 sequels. It was turned into a comic book. And if you find the comic book, hang on to it, because it's very rare and it's worth a lot of money. But I also recommend his books. Every book that Rex Miller wrote is compelling and fascinating. And Slob is probably the most unique serial killer in all of fiction. He may be the only character that compares to Slob is Hannibal Lecter. And of course, Thomas Harris is famous for creating Hannibal Lecter. And after those books exploded on the big screen, he virtually gave up writing, although he did pop out one novel a couple of years ago, which wasn't bad, but it can't compare to the Hannibal Lecter novels. And we all think of Thomas Harris as art and literature, and it is, because his gift to make the most grotesque scenes and characters credible is what keeps us reading. But today, he's an example of a pulp writer who's been inflated to best-selling status and literary overtones and pretensions. And I don't think that's fair, because just because he's a good writer, you shouldn't take him to task for writing in a sophisticated and hard-hitting manner. One of the great pulp writers of the 40s and 50s was Donald Goines. And Donald Goines read a very rough life. He was a pimp and a thief, and at some point, he wrote a book and sold it, and from then on, he realized he could make money writing. So it got him off the street, and he wrote a whole series of books, and they're just fascinating, and he's got a unique voice. And another great pulp writer was Joe Gores, who was himself a Pinkerton detective, like Dashiell Hammett. Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler are the two fathers of the modern detective story. Chandler created Philip Marlowe, and Hammett created the Continental Op. Hammett also wrote a book called Red Harvest, and it's the basis of several movies, including Yojimbo by Akira Kurosawa, and Last Man Standing, which I believe is a Walter Hill film. Those are all based on Red Harvest. Today, I write pulp. It's what I do, and most significantly in my line of biker novels about a reformed motorcycle hoodlum who goes to prison, finds God, and comes out and is resolved to turn his life around. There's a huge market for pulp. There are pulp conventions regularly. Airship 27 is one of the most notable pulp publishers. But even the big literary houses are homes to pulp. Anybody would die to have another novel by Thomas Harris. And of course, the Spencer series by Robert Parker, which featured a detective in Boston, has been turned into several TV series and a movie. So pulp is alive and thriving more than ever. And it's a good thing, because when Jim Thompson and Donald Goines were working, they could barely make a living. The money they were paid was so low. And that's true of most authors today. There are 1 million novels are published in the United States every year, and barely 10% of them return a living wage. It's just something to keep in mind. However, as long as people are reading, there will be pulp adventures. You probably have a favorite pulp author of your own, and I would say that's good. I encourage you to read pulp.
Hey, very insightful. What is your current Indiegogo project that's happening?
Private American.
And what is that about?
Well, it's what Captain America would be doing if he were being written by people who could write and understood the situation. It's about a veteran who lives in Texas, who witnesses the devastation on the border every day. The deaths by fentanyl, the women raped, the drugs pouring over the border, terrorists pouring over the border, and understanding that the government not only won't do anything, but is encouraging this. He takes matters into his own hands. It's a lot like The Punisher. If you want to find out more about it, please look at our Indiegogo campaign, theprivateamerican.com, theprivateamerican.com. Just go there, take a look.
All right, very good. And are there other upcoming projects that we should know about?
You know,
you want to share about?
I'm working on so many different things right now, but a lot of them I can't really announce because it would be premature. However, we're going to launch Bronze Star before the end of the year. That's a supernatural Western I've written that Pat Broderick is illustrating, and it's the greatest work of Pat's career. Everybody who's seen it has been blown away. And if you Google the Bronze Star comic, it'll take you to our pre-launch page, and you can take a look at some of the art and judge for yourself.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we have been trying to do these on Wednesdays, but obviously this is Friday, and we may switch to a different day because it seems like Wednesdays are just too busy, too hectic. But we will try and get these out more on a regular basis. Please subscribe, like, comment. We appreciate it, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.